Okay, we're picking up at chapter 5, page 112. All right, so just talking about your high productivity, remember it's going to always be hot and wet. So if you look at the graph up here, you can see that your red areas, it's going to be a lot of the Amazon, Africa, parts of Indonesia and the islands here. So those are your high areas, and they traditionally have hot and wet, humid climates. Now, the purple, which is 0 to 100 for your net primary productivity, is a lot of it is your open ocean, your cold, open ocean. So that makes sense, yes? And then as you can see here, the blue, that's where a lot of our deserts here in the United States is. So that makes sense. Okay, so make sure you do know this. All right, so big thing, you have to make sure you understand that nutrients are often a limiting factor in ecosystems, all right? Now, the reason why is oceans can run out of nitrate, okay? Fresh water runs out of phosphate. The land can run out of phosphate. Now, phosphates, what is so big about them? Well, they're hard to come by because they require erosion of rocks, all right, to bring it to the soil, or the decomposition of dead organisms. Now, this process of erosion of rocks is pretty slow, hence why it is considered a limiting factor, because it takes a long time. So, and there is no synthetic version of phosphates. It just takes a long time for it to be created. So this is why it's considered a limiting factor, because we can't mass produce it. We can't just add it whenever we want to. We have to wait for it to be done. Now, I also, if producers run out of the nutrients they need, they eventually will die out, and this is basically a huge negative effect on food chains and food webs in the different biomes and in different ecosystems. So this is why we care about all of this. Okay. Okay. Dead zones. Since we've been talking about this since the beginning of the chapter, if you look at this lovely graph here, you'll notice that a lot of the dead zones are along the east coast of the United States, the west coast, and a ton in Europe. These are mostly all the richer countries, and that's because we eat a lot more meat. We do a lot more farming with fertilizers. So it's just kind of the trend here is that all of your richer countries actually experience most of the dead zones. And that is just because of our lifestyle. We eat a lot of meat, which requires a lot more nutrients and a lot of manure, and unfortunately we're killing off our natural bodies of water there with high levels of dissolved oxygen. So they're going bye-byes. All right. You also need to know the word ecotone, which is on the next page. There we go. So you need to know what an ecotone is. It's a transition between two different ecosystems. So for example, there can be an area between a chaparral and a desert. And basically this ecotone has species from both biomes. So just make sure that you know what that is. Now, how do we talk about different ecosystems? Well, we call that landscape ecology, or some books call it spatial ecology. So this diagram kind of shows that to you. Okay. It's just different patterns that are located in certain areas. So here's an example of your ecotone. All right. Now, the next page is talking about how populations are dispersed. Just make sure that you understand metapopulation, conservation biology, which we'll talk more about in chapter 11, and GIS. GIS is a computer system. It's pretty cool. You just have layers upon layers upon layers of information, topography, hydrology, vegetation, population size, and you can manipulate the data to figure things out that you need. So it's pretty cool program. I have a minor in it. So again, it's a very useful tool that allows us to produce maps that integrates all different information and create new graphs to tell a story that we need to see. Okay. All right. Ecosystem goods and services. Now, we already know about ecosystem services, okay? The big thing you have to remember with this is that they provide humans, not the environment, with economic or survival needs, all right? So like if you were asked which is an example of an ecosystem service, do not say it's creating a food chain, okay? This is a no-no. You will not get points for this on the AP exam. So this list here is great. It goes into details as well, and we all know for your FRQs, you have to explain, give you the cause, the effect, and the reason behind things. So make sure that you review this. Now, this chart here gives you ideas, but for example, you could not say that a service is purifying air. No, you will not get any points for that. You need to say that the trees on Earth purify air by taking in toxins. That is how you can get full credit for an example of an ecosystem service that the Earth offers humans. All right, remember, it has to be for humans. If you go down on this page, make sure you know all the vocab on this page. A pool is basically a reservoir, and resident time is basically a flux. So make sure that you understand everything going on around here for your biogeochem cycles. Okay. Okay, the water cycle. This is probably the easiest one out of all of them, and you've been learning about it for a long time. Again, you need to know all the vocabulary related to this cycle. So another name for the water cycle is a hydrologic cycle. Big things, how we impact it, humans. We create dams and aqueducts, so we actually change the pattern and the process of which the water travels on our planet. All right, irrigation. That's another big one, how we affect that. And then unfortunately we overpump groundwater, okay? We can actually cause aquifers to go dry. We can overuse it. And then what happens is if we overuse all the water and pump it dry, we can actually cause the ground to fall apart or to, what's the word? It basically changes the landscape as well. So it's a big thing. All right, carbon cycle, big things you need to know. The largest reservoir is sedimentary rock, okay? The second is the oceans. The oceans take in carbon. Basically what happens is there's dissolving carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into the water. And what happens is a lot of the little all the animals down in the ocean, they actually take the carbon and create their shells, which is calcium carbonate, so CaCO3. So that's where the carbon gets its role. So it's all in the shells of all the different animals. All right, and we also produce CO2 due to photosynthesis of the phytoplankton in the oceans.